Have you ever felt bad for distancing yourself from someone who, theoretically, never did anything serious to you? Have you ever felt confused after talking to someone who seems nice but leaves you emotionally drained? Sometimes malice doesn't shout, it whispers. It comes disguised as jokes, honesty, or care. But behind the sarcasm, innocent gossip, constant victimhood, and emotional manipulation, there is something darker, an intention to manipulate, control, and bring you down. And the worst part? Society applauds this kind of behavior as if it's normal, and you, who feel the weight of it, still carry the guilt for distancing yourself. In this video, I will show you how to identify these subtle signs of malice that often go unnoticed, even by the most experienced. You'll gain clarity to see what's behind the masks and strength to stand firm with wisdom. If you're tired of complicated friendships, toxic environments, or relationships that make you doubt yourself, watch until the end. Because understanding this might be the first step in reclaiming your peace, your confidence, and your emotional freedom. Have you ever wondered why, even without suffering direct shouting, insults, or attacks, you leave certain conversations with a heavy heart, confused, and even feeling like you've done something wrong? Have you ever caught yourself feeling guilty for wanting to distance yourself from someone who never treated you badly, but who, curiously, always leaves you emotionally drained? Well, some wounds don't leave visible bruises. There are aggressions that don't impose themselves with harsh words but subtly infiltrate, masked as kindness. And it's about this type of malice that almost no one talks. Because it doesn't shout, it whispers. In this video, we are going to open our eyes and hearts to a type of behavior that confuses, hurts, and manipulates, precisely because it comes disguised as politeness, concern, and even pity. We'll talk about subtle yet devastating attitudes that reveal a malicious heart, even when the mouth speaks sweetly. These are people who, in the eyes of others, seem too good. But in your eyes, little by little, they silence you, control you, and empty you from the inside out. And the promise of this video is clear. By identifying these signs, you will regain your discernment, your peace, and your emotional freedom. Because the most dangerous malice is the one that comes with a smile and a soft tone. And you need to recognize this, not to judge, but to protect yourself. Are you with me? Stay until the end of this video, because we will pray a powerful prayer together, asking God for discernment, courage, and healing to deal with all of this. This is not just a video, it's a spiritual moment. Sarcasm may seem harmless at first glance. Often it comes disguised as a joke, playful banter between friends, or "I'm just messing with you." But what happens when the joke always targets the same person? What happens when you laugh on the outside but are bleeding on the inside? There is a clear and often overlooked difference between light humor that brings people together and sarcasm that hurts. Constant irony, when used as a communication standard, can become a precise weapon in the hands of someone who wants to undermine the other person's self-esteem without getting their hands dirty. And the worst part? It is socially accepted, even applauded. In the workplace, this type of attack may come from a colleague who constantly makes subtle comments about your competence. "Wow, you actually made it on time today, huh?" With a smile on their face and a relaxed tone. At home, it may be a family member who always needs to throw in a jab during every gathering. "Oh, but you've always been the most sensitive in the family, right?" And you laugh. Everyone laughs. But inside, you feel the blow. Because constant sarcasm devalues, destabilizes, and dehumanizes. It communicates that your worth is smaller, that you are an exaggerator, unable to laugh at yourself, too fragile to be around. But here's the question that needs to be asked. Why do the jokes always target you? And why does no one realize how much it hurts? Maybe it's time to stop laughing along and start protecting yourself. Do you know that person who, no matter what happens, always finds a way to come out as the victim in the story. You share something difficult you're going through, and they respond with an even more tragic story. You get frustrated with something they did, and suddenly the conversation shifts to how insensitive you are, how they've been trying so hard, and no one recognizes it. This is chronic victimhood, a subtle form of emotional manipulation that flips the logic of responsibility and makes you feel guilty even when you're right. And the most dangerous part? It's so wrapped in emotion that it feels unjust to point it out. It feels cruel to say that the person who suffers so much also manipulates. Such profiles show up in all kinds of relationships. The coworker who never accepts feedback and says they're being persecuted. The family member who dramatizes any difficult conversation to seem attacked. Or the spouse who keeps saying, "You don't understand me," every time you try to set a healthy boundary. They are masters of emotional distortion. They play on your empathy until you lose clarity and begin to doubt yourself. Imagine the scene. You open your heart about a serious problem, and before you can finish, the friend starts talking about their own traumas. And when you try to return to your topic, they say, "Hurt," but you only think about yourself. Little by little, you start to diminish yourself, afraid of seeming selfish. But know this: compassion is not captivity. Helping someone does not mean erasing your own pain. I'm telling you this because I care about you and want to protect you. It sounds harmless, right? A phrase that starts with the intention of helping but actually disguises as subtle poison. Gossip disguised as concern is one of the most deceitful forms of emotional malice. When someone approaches you saying they are sharing something just to warn or protect you, be alert. Behind this mask of empathy, there is often the desire to control narratives, manipulate information, and divide groups. This person who cares so much about others is actually creating a cycle of insecurity, spreading seeds of doubt and distrust among friends, family, or colleagues. The goal is always the same: to weaken mutual trust without ever committing to a direct confrontation. "I've just heard that" is a key phrase you may hear before disguised gossip. And when this happens in environments that should be safe, like churches or work teams, the emotional damage is deep. Healthy relationships are slowly corroded, and distrust begins to permeate even the most genuine relationships. How can you identify disguised gossip? Pay attention to the concerns that always start with phrases like, "Don't tell anyone," but the malice may be hidden there in every word, waiting for the right moment to spread division and pain. Subtle emotional blackmail is one of the most destructive forms of manipulation, and it often starts with what seems like an act of love or affection. "After everything I've done for you" is one of the most common phrases in this type of manipulation. Those who use this tactic make you feel indebted, as if the love you receive is conditional on your obedience or submission. But what was supposed to be a relationship based on trust and affection starts to turn into a bargaining chip. The fear of losing affection becomes an emotional prison, where you find yourself enslaved to the other person's desires, always trying to please, even at the expense of yourself. This kind of blackmail doesn't only happen in romantic relationships. It can infiltrate any bond. Parents who use their sacrifices to control their children's lives. Friends who present themselves as countless favors and then demand you pay with compliance. Or partners who make you feel guilty for not meeting all their expectations. It's a manipulation game in which you become more and more trapped, unable to breathe without guilt. But here's a reflection. How do you identify when affection becomes a bargaining chip? First, pay attention to the little favors that come with a price. When someone makes you feel like you owe them something for simple kindness, your emotional freedom starts to be compromised. Protecting yourself from this doesn't mean being insensitive. It means allowing yourself to live without being manipulated by guilt. Sometimes, the poison comes in the form of a compliment. You hear, "Wow, You look great in that outfit. You look like a different person. Or, congratulations on the promotion. I never thought they'd choose someone like you. And on the outside, everything sounds like a light, friendly, even kind comment. But inside, something tightens. It's as if instead of being seen, you are diminished. What seems like admiration actually carries comparison, envy, and a subtle desire to bring you down. This is the sign of covert competition, when compliments are used as an emotional weapon to keep you in your place. This kind of malice is common in long-standing friendships, professional environments, and even within the family. The person doesn't attack you directly, but whenever you achieve something, they need to insert a comment that creates doubt, that brings discomfort. The impact of this is silent but deep. You begin to withdraw, question yourself, and often dim your own shine to keep the peace. The fear of displeasing with your success starts shaping your steps, your expression, even your identity. So, how can you recognize when admiration comes with poison? Pay attention to the tone, the intention behind the words, and the effect they have on you. If every time you share a victory you leave the conversation feeling small, perhaps it's not admiration. It's competition disguised. And no one deserves to live walking on eggshells to avoid upsetting someone who can't stand seeing you grow. You know, I'm only telling you this because I care about you, but are you sure you can handle it? This phrase, which at first glance seems like an act of care, often carries an invisible layer of disbelief and judgment. It's passive-aggressive advice, the kind that comes disguised as help but paralyzes you. The speaker doesn't yell, doesn't accuse. On the contrary, they come across as concerned, mature, even spiritual. But behind the soft words, there's a seed of doubt being planted in your heart. Are you really capable? Are you ready? Are you dreaming too big? This is one of the most subtle forms of emotional manipulation because it comes from people close to you, family, leaders, experienced friends. And the effect is devastating. Slowly, you begin to delay decisions, avoid risks, and seek approval before taking any steps. Your courage weakens, and your self-confidence hangs on what others think you should or shouldn't do. The fear of disappointing replaces the joy of trying. Want to learn how to identify this kind of advice? Pay attention to the tone of voice. Is it paternalistic, subtly superior? Analyze the context. Does this person encourage you or only show up to protect you from failure? And most importantly, notice the repetition. If every time you decide to move forward, they show up with a warning, be cautious. This isn't guidance, it's disguised emotional control. Free yourself from the fear of making mistakes and the dependence on approval. You have the right to try, grow, and surprise. I prayed, and God revealed to me that you are in disobedience. Few phrases are as paralyzing as this, especially when it comes from someone you spiritually admire. Spiritual manipulation is one of the most sophisticated forms of emotional control, because when someone says God spoke to them, who dares to question? And that's exactly where the danger lies. Not every revelation is divine, and not every reprimand disguised as spiritual care has anything to do with what God truly thinks about you. Often, it's just control dressed up as holiness. This type of malice tends to appear in religious environments, devotional circles, and even in relationships where one person positions themselves as more spiritually evolved. The person uses verses, anointed advice, and phrases like "God is showing me" to influence your decisions, silence your intuition, and generate fear of being out of God's will. This causes spiritual confusion, toxic submission, and unjust guilt. Suddenly you begin to walk on eggshells, not out of fear of God, but out of fear of displeasing the one who positioned themselves as God's voice in your life. True faith frees, not traps. God doesn't need manipulative spokespeople to guide his children. If someone uses his name to paralyze you, shame you, or isolate you, question them, pray for discernment, and remember, healthy spirituality strengthens your autonomy and clarity, not the other way around. Have you ever received help from someone, and then felt like you were in eternal debt? As if every act of generosity came with a silent charge, an invisible contract demanding blind loyalty, unconditional gratitude, and constant obedience. This is the pattern of goodness that demands. At first, this person seems like an angel sent by God, helpful, present, always ready to assist. But over time, you realize that everything comes at a cost, an emotional cost, a cost of submission. A cost that gradually erodes your autonomy without you even noticing. This type of emotional malice hides behind altruism. These are people who save you only to later dominate you. They offer to solve your problems, but in return, they demand centrality, loyalty, and even priority. The language is always subtle but laced with poison. If it weren't for me, where would you be now? Or, after everything I've done for you, is this how you treat me? What seemed like help turns into emotional blackmail, and gratitude becomes a prison. You find yourself trying to compensate, please, serve, even when it costs you mental health and freedom. True goodness does not imprison, it liberates. It does not demand emotional payment, nor does it require constant repayment. When someone helps you with genuine love, the gesture is enough in itself. You are grateful, of course, but you are not controlled. If you feel that you are being manipulated by what you received, perhaps this help wasn't so innocent after all. True goodness has no emotional bill. It builds, strengthens, and allows you to grow, without needing to kneel as a form of gratitude. Above all, take a deep breath. No matter where you are right now, in your room, on the bus, on a break at work, or even crying alone in the bathroom, this is a moment between you and God, a safe space where you can shed the fear, doubt, and guilt that you may have carried for so long. Today, let's pray together, not with elaborate words, but with a naked heart. Because what you need now is discernment, clarity, the strength to distance yourself without feeling cruel, the courage to see the malice disguised as kindness, the faith to not give in to emotional manipulation disguised as care, and the grit, so much grit to stand firm, even when your soul is still trembling inside. Pray with me now. Lord, I stand before you at this moment with a weary heart, but willing to learn. I am surrounded by soft voices, gentle gestures, sweet words, but that carry disguised poison. Father, I need your discernment. Open my spiritual eyes to see the truth beyond appearances. Show me who truly walks with me in love, and who only uses love as a strategy for control. Free me, Lord, from the emotional traps that bind me in cycles of guilt, fear, and submission. Give me wisdom to confront what is false without becoming bitter. Give me the courage to step away, even when it means disappointing others' expectations. Teach me to love without being manipulated, to forgive without losing myself, to help without losing my way. I surrender to you all the relationships that confuse me. Break the bonds that drain my soul. Strengthen the ones that draw me closer to you. Let my mind be aligned with your truth, and my heart strengthened in your peace. In Jesus' name, I pray and trust. Amen. Now take a moment to be silent. Let this prayer move from your ear to your chest. God didn't just listen, He understood. And He's already beginning to show you what you couldn't see before. You're not exaggerating, you're awakening. What you've felt throughout this entire video, that restlessness in your chest, the lump in your throat, the desire to cry and shout at the same time, is the Spirit of God pulling you to a new level of discernment. Because to discern is not to judge. To discern is to survive. It's to protect the peace God gave you. It's to choose truth, even when it hurts. Today you began to see that evil doesn't always enter your life knocking at the door. Sometimes it takes off its shoes, smiles gently, and asks if it can help you. But behind the smile comes the poison. Behind the favor comes the charge. Behind the kindness, the manipulation. And now that you've seen it, you can no longer deceive yourself. Remember the signs: the sarcasm that bleeds, the victimization that twists logic, the pious gossip, the emotional blackmail disguised as love, the veiled competition that keeps you from shining, the advice that drains your faith. The spiritual manipulation, the goodness that demands. These patterns drain your light, erode your self-esteem, and distort your perception of love. But you were called to see. You were called to discern. You were called to stand firm with courage and faith. Because true goodness doesn't make you sick, it heals you. True connection doesn't imprison you, it sets you free. And the evil that hides behind a smile is more dangerous than the one that shouts. But now, you are prepared to see. If this video touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Comment below which of these signs you recognize the most. Share it with someone who needs to open their eyes too. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now. Because here we speak soul to soul, without fear, without masks, and always with truth. Until the next video, and may God continue to give you light, courage, and discernment.